Okay, so welcome to the Inspiration Show with Roz and Rich. So we have a special guest here with us today. Her name is Julia Keller. She is a nutritional hypnotherapist. She uses nutrition therapy, hypnotherapy, coaching, and NLP to help her clients towards mental, physical well-being, and self-love. She helps them to deal with common issues of loneliness, relationships, low self-worth, poor self-care, and low mood. Her unique open approach helps endanger trust and confidence and clients of all ages, leading to incredible and inspiring success stories. Julia also holds an MBA and a BA in psychology. Wow, a very, very, very highly qualified lady. So welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here on the show, Julia.
Thanks for having me, Roz.
No, it's good. And so tell us a little bit about, because you have got an accent, so just tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about where you're from and your background, etc. So we
So
can.
I was born in Eastern Europe,
Mm,
but I grew up in America. And then I actually came here to do my business studies. And then at some point when I got divorced, I changed my entire life from doing business to doing more coaching. And that
mm,
reason I started doing that, and I actually started working with clients who were either lonely or traumatized after a divorce or like really struggling to meet somebody because of my own story where I went through this period of intense, like kind of
mm,
difficulty and grief and
mm,
struggle somewhere after my divorce. And then found myself running in the park one day. And at that point, I wasn't into running at all. But I just went there for kind of like, I needed to get stuff out. So I just
mm,
ran and I was crying and crying. And I was like, help me find a way. Cause I was lost in everything. I didn't know what to do with my career because I'd taken time off to raise my kids. I didn't know what to do like relationship wise. I was like, can I ever find the person that I want again? Like completely like didn't even know what I wanted to do with my life. And I don't know, something just happened and something just came over me. I like to say it was like the spirit of my grandmother who I was really close to. And I just changed my life completely. I studied coaching. After that, I studied hypnotherapy, NLP, and nutrition now, and naturopathy. So, and kind of like changed everything, working more, helping clients with
mm,
self-love, with mental health issues, with, you know, finding their self-worth. And from the work with clients with hypnotherapy, I found also that a lot of negative self-worth came from weight issues and you know, voices that you heard in your head.
yeah.
So the hypnotherapy helps with the voices and helps you kind of work on the stuff that happened before, so the stuff that happens when we're little even.
Mm,
Yeah,
um, but then I needed the nutrition to kind of help them with the good habits as well.
yeah.
So
yeah,
somewhere in the way we think, the way we eat, and the way we live, which is the
Mm,
naturopathy, is kind of the way towards health, both physical, mental, and, you know, emotional health.
yeah,
So
yeah.
absolutely. So it's such a holistic way of dealing with people.
yes,
It's so well rounded. So I can
yes.
imagine. So when clients come to you, they come to you with a problem or an issue,
Mm.
and you just deal with them in a very holistic way, or do you just do
Mm.
one after the other, after the other, after
No, I do everything together. It's
the
very
other?
hard to break it up when you have
Yeah.
certain ways of doing things. I mean, I started with hypnotherapy and NLP, so I always fall back to that. So whereas most nutritional therapists will ask like, what do you eat? You know, what does your gut feel like? You know, these are really important questions, which I ask too. But I delve much deeper into, okay, what are your thoughts telling you? How do
Mm,
you actually feel about yourself?
yeah.
What do you do for relaxation? You know, what makes you happy? What makes you unhappy? So my first session with a client is like twice as long as every other person's first
Yes,
session.
of
We were
course,
trained
of course.
with our first sessions being 1 hour. I do 2 hours
Yeah.
with a client, whether it's online or in person, because I want to go that deep into, you know, what's driving them.
Because people don't
Okay.
know, do they?
So,
People never.
Julia, I wanted to ask.
Oh, go on, Richard.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes, I wanted to ask Julia if if you could tell us a bit more about self-love. What is self-love, and how self-love can impact or help your relationships.
Well, self love is all about, it's not, you know, it's kind of one of these words where it says what it is, but at the same time, people don't really know what does that actually mean? So self-love is really like, how do you feel about yourself? But it's not just, do you love yourself? It's because everybody will say, well, of course I love myself.
Mm.
It's like, do you value yourself, and do you truly value yourself? So as you are. So even if you say, okay, I weigh 82 kilos, but I'd like to weigh 60 kilos, but can you appreciate yourself as you are enough so that you can take that journey to weigh 60 kilos? I mean, I'm using weight because that's one common issue that obviously people come to me for. And if you can't appreciate yourself as 82 kilos, you'll never get to that 60 kilos, because you need to value yourself enough, to care enough about yourself, to be able to stick to a goal. And it's very difficult if you don't think you're worth it, or if you have voices in your head that say, when I say voices in your head, I don't mean a mental health voices. I mean like your parents' voices, or your friends' voices, or a bully's voice from high school. All of us carry these demons where they
Yes.
talk to us and they tell us we're not worthy, we're not good enough, we're too fat, we're too ugly, we have too many pimples, whatever it is, whatever the issue is. And I mean, I have two teenagers as kids. So I see it now, the things that like all of us went through when we were younger, and the things that my clients went through. And I think every time I have a client that has issues from their childhood, I'm always thinking, okay, do I do that with my kids? Is that like something we have to make sure that we deal with these things from the past? Because a lot of times the voices have nothing to do with us. Sometimes it was an angry parent who said something, when they were frustrated about something else, nothing to do with us. And then after that, we always feel like we're not good enough. Or sometimes it was somebody, we were going through hormonal changes when we're a teenager and gain a little bit of weight, and somebody called us fat, and that's what we see in our head. We're always fat, we're not good enough, we had pimples, and so we see ourselves with acne. And the thing is, if you see yourself in that way, it's almost impossible to change and become something different. So if you see yourself as overweight, it's very hard to lose weight, because your normal for you is that you're overweight. And so with self-love, you have to find and accept who you are first in order to be able to move to who you want to be.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I'm okay, and I want to be this, and I'm worthy to give myself this gift of being this person I really want to be.
Yeah, because I mean, people just don't know. What I was going to say is, like, people just don't know, do they? We don't, as humans, we don't normally take the time out to really understand our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, and how it connects with our body. We just don't make that mind-body connection, especially here in the West. And I think that's the thing, that's the element that seems to be missing from a lot of people. Why we have this influx of low self-worth, low self-esteem, because no one actually sits us down and does this work with us when we're growing up, when we're young, when we're teens, even when we're in our early 20s. We have to find it for ourselves, and I really think that something like this needs to be on the curriculum at schools, because too much going on, especially with teenagers.
Yeah, I have been preaching that should be on the curriculum for ages. And in fact, I'm actually working with another friend who studied NLP with me. She works with students, and she works with kind of teens, impressionable teens in state schools. And we're working on adding something like that. And she did a couple of videos with us together doing something like that, because it's just so important. It's like, even now schools started to teach nutrition more often, and more the kind of nutrition that I would be like okay with, because before it was a really strange nutrition. And they still haven't it's kind of putting itself into the curriculum in some schools, but it's not enough. These things of how we value ourselves are just so important to create the kind of life that we either will have or won't have.
So would you say that's the number one issue with the clients that you see, is this whole idea of low self-worth, or not feeling good enough?
I would say that's a huge issue, and that kind of goes into whether they have the ability to achieve their goals. So that's something like the person who says, I really want to be this, and I'm really unhappy with myself like this. But then they go and, let's say, stress eat, or, anger management eat, or unhappiness eat, or whatever it is, so they will sabotage themselves. So that whole self-sabotage is huge in the kind of people I work with. And loneliness is a big issue when I work with people who are kind of older. When we're young, loneliness is not so much of an issue. It's more alienation as teenagers. or as kids, but loneliness becomes a really big issue when you get to be kind of like the over 60s. Because, you know, sometimes our loved ones die or people we care about die and we don't really have, you know, maybe we don't have kids or don't have a good relationship with the kids or whatever it is. So it depends very much on the age. And then, you know, skin issues, weight issues. But again, if you have the ability, this kind of the self-esteem to care about yourself enough, then you will give yourself the gift of holding back and having, you know, the ability to not eat if you want to lose weight, or to exercise if you want to look better, or whatever it is.
Interesting. Richard, did you have any other questions?
Yeah, I mean, all right, we talk about nutrition, but the importance of nutrition in a relationship, you know, not so much about what we need to eat, but why we need to eat healthily, how that impacts your relationship, basically.
So, as far as taking care of yourself, everything you do to take care of yourself is taking care of yourself. So that's kind of all, you know, self-love, self-care. And if you have good self-love, you'll have good self-care. So if you do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself, you're also going to be better to take care of yourself in a relationship. So let's move away from food for a moment and just go into, you know, if somebody doesn't treat us right in a relationship, if we're constantly, you know, I have a couple of clients, for example, who were with married men, let's say. That's, you know, a good example. And those married men weren't giving them anything. So it's not like they were getting anything out of it. It was really just to fill a void of loneliness. I mean, one of them in particular, it was, to me, it sounded like it's not something, you know, that I would ever advise clients to be, where somebody would come over, she'd cook dinner for him, he'd, like, basically they'd be intimate and then he'd leave. I never gave her a present for her birthday, never, you know, even acknowledged and you know, their anniversary, let's say, or whatever it is. Like, basically everything she was giving, and he was taking. So why would she do that, you know? And it was the same person who had an inability to self-control. So it's the same thing, you know, like no self-control with that. Obviously, she didn't value herself enough to say, no, this isn't okay for me. I want a real relationship. She also didn't value herself enough to take care of the way she looked after herself, let's say. She'd go into really low moments and she'd eat a lot. And, you know, it's that same pattern. Once she learned to kind of self-value, and like it started out with her just being able to self-control, and then she was like, oh, I can do that. I can self-control. I can stop myself from overeating. And then she can say, okay, now I can self-control and stop myself from being misused. And she started to demand more from this other person. And then, you know, when he couldn't give it to her, she was like, oh, this is actually not serving me. So all of these things are kind of very much bound together. It's not going to be, you're never going to have an independent issue that you know, you don't look after yourself, but at the same time, you're excellent with everything else. Like you take care of yourself with everything else. No, it's going to be all bound together. You're going to not look after yourself. You know, you won't look after your health enough. She was also getting sick a lot, because every time she would, you know, have a low, she would get ill. So she'd manifest like cold sores, and then she'd manifest a cold, and she'd be getting like a cold every month, which isn't normal. So it was like all these things are, you know, bound together. And once we started working, we fixed one area. So she saw that she could do it. Pat yourself on the back. And then she's able to, you know, fix another area. And then at the end, she was able to leave this person, demand something better, go into a relationship that actually served her. And she was an attractive woman. It's not like she was, you know, unattractive, but she didn't see that. She didn't see that at all. She needed to find that in herself. So once she did, everything got fixed, everything got healthier, and everything got better.
So one of the questions I wanted to ask you actually was that, I mean, training and relationship coaching, we discussed values and beliefs. So you just discussed a lady's self-values. I mean, and they had to be changed. You can change your values and your beliefs, but so how did you change somebody's values? What's the process? of that, because people get stuck in those values and beliefs for years.
Oh, absolutely. So this is where when I was studying coaching, I, initially started with coaching. I didn't feel like coaching was enough, which is where I started to study NLP and then hypnotherapy, because I needed something to go deeper into, the core of the issue. And that's what NLP and hypnotherapy helps you do. It helps you to go deeper and to kind of fix a lot of the broken things that happened from long ago. So, when we delve deeper into her issues, they started when she was younger, which, is pretty
Quite
much
often,
normal. I mean, the
yeah.
amount of time I use regression hypnotherapy is just, it's incredible, because in the end, that helps. And it's not something you want to use in the first session. It's something that you use, after somebody is comfortable with you and gets to know you well. But that's, for example, a really great tool, just to go back and to see, okay, where did the problem manifest? And stuff like that. So, even past life regression is something I love to do with clients, because sometimes, it's not even in this lifetime. Or whether that, a lot of people don't believe in past life regression, and whether it's true or not true, it doesn't really matter. It's if it helps you fix the problem, then it worked.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And I think just to let people know, because we talked about NLP, it stands for neuro linguistic programming.
Yes.
And it's a method that's been used for quite some time now. And like you say, it digs a little bit deeper underneath the surface and looks at patterns of voice and language and how our brain actually works and how our brain is programmed. So that's what NLP is. And in fact, I'm going to be doing my practitioner's course in the next
amazing.
and my master practitioners. So
amazing.
I'm excited about that.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
I'm really looking forward to doing that. So and what you were saying earlier really rings true. Like, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And like you say, if one area of their life is not going the way they want it, and then you start to dig a little bit deeper, there tends to be a reason why. There tends to be a root cause, and sometimes that's really you need to get to the heart of that, don't you? And so,
absolutely.
So now, once people have started to address these issues in their life and things start to improve and change, what advice, or maybe not advice, but like what sort of steps could they do to now try and find a healthy relationship?
So can I just say it's in my book? I'm going to just show my book off. This is like really I'd like to call it, this is like what I do with a lot of clients to help them find love. I also have an online course, which is still running. It kind of like sells itself now. And it's, I think, by the same name. And it kind of goes a little bit further in there. In fact, Richard's appears in that online course a little bit. Richard, remember we recorded that ages ago? Yeah. So it helps people to really do the steps to find love. And what I do here in the book and on the course, which makes it, it's not a big book, but which makes it more unique, let's say, is that I just basically do the step plans that I do a lot of times with my clients. Now, obviously, one-to-one coaching is always going to be better, because I'll be able to use hypnotherapy and we can go back and look at what's wrong and stuff like that. But if for people who want kind of a inexpensive solution, getting a book is a good start. And then the online course is another, follow-on step. And what it basically is there's lots of things in here. One, we look at, what's stopping you. So you kind of do the exercises for yourself. You kind of write down the things that aren't working, what your expectations are. And then we look at kind of what you want to happen. And I call it attract authentic love, because the idea is to manifest the love that you want in your life. So you go and we make lists of how to, get what you want. I really believe in making a list so that you know what you want. I do a couple of exercises they can do on their own, as far as meditation and, trying to get what you want, manifesting on your own and things like that. There's a couple of meditation and manifesting exercises on my online course as well. And I do a lot of that with clients. So
have you got any tips for manifesting love?
Is that you asking for yourself or a client?
Well, I'm asking
Richard.
I'm asking for a friend.
Oh, send them to me. That's the tip. Go onto my website and book a free 30-minute session, 30-minute call. That's a tip. No, but seriously, a couple of tips is number one, you cannot be loved by others if you don't love yourself. So
Yeah,
this is
absolutely.
something I say in my book, I say in my course, and I say to my kids and, you know, to everybody. How you treat yourself is how you will let everybody else treat you. So if in your head you are angry at yourself and you keep putting yourself down, and you'd be surprised how many people actually do that, a lot of people do, then when somebody else puts you down, that will sound okay to you.
Yeah.
So this is what, you know, for example, with the clients that were with married men, you know, it was like okay to be treated like that because that's normal to them. They don't value them. They don't believe they need anything more. But it's not even them. I mean, I had clients who had issues with, you know, their mother. They were born in a household with a lot of kids, and they were the only, you know, they were like somewhere in the middle, and so they felt kind of ignored. And so when people ignore them, they're like, oh well, that's normal. I'm used to being ignored because, you know, nobody pays attention to me, and so they're kind of like living in this lonely place of like not any friendships. You know, people don't just come to me to find love. A lot of people come just because they really struggle to make friends or to meet
Right.
people. You know, or they have fears, or, you know, issues with themselves. They don't think they're good enough for whatever reason. So they were used to being, you know, like this one particular woman went to a state school and the class was like, you know, almost 40 kids in a class, and was ignored in class. She wasn't the best. She wasn't the worst. She was somewhere in the middle. She was one of 5 kids, you know, maybe number 3 or number 2, and she was ignored in her family. And then, you know, she went to work and she was kind of like not, you know, neither here nor there, and was ignored there. So, you know, just used to not, like, she doesn't speak up for herself. She doesn't
Not
have,
shining.
she kind of
Yeah.
lacked personality in a way. And then, you know, what we did with her is we helped her find a personality. We've helped her find her passions.
Yeah.
We helped her find, you know, what drives you. And she like shone like a flower. And she's kind of stopped, you know, she would wear like, she had a very nice figure, but she would wear everything that didn't show it. You know, like big t-shirts and like bulky sweatpants and whatever, you know, and at the end of it, she was like wearing skirts and blouses, and she looked really elegant. And I mean, she was like really, she looked like Aman with what's her name? That actor's Amal.
Amal Clooney.
That's it, Amal Clooney. Oh,
Mm,
names are not my thing.
yeah.
She looked like Amal Clooney. Like you know,
Wow.
she kind of, we took her to do a makeover. I mean, she was just like a beautiful girl, but she never saw herself ever.
Yeah.
And then her relationship with her mother improved. Her relationship with her family improved. She finally stood up for herself. She got friends. She got a boyfriend. I mean, like, it was just
It's a ripple
really
effect,
nice
isn't it? You just
stories.
change one thing and then it sort of ripples out, and it touches absolutely every part of your life. And it's so fantastic when you can see that happening with people.
It was amazing.
You know, and the job satisfaction that people like us get when we work with people like that. It's just off the scale, isn't it? And
absolutely. And with her, we actually did something from family constellation therapy. I don't know if you know anything about that. But something my dad does a lot of. There's this exercise that you do one-on-one. And so she had this issue with her mother. And we really started with just literally fixing that issue. And once we were able to fix that issue, like things started to flow. She started to feel more confident, and we were able, you know, she was able to feel better about herself, show herself off. So it's like you start with one little thing, and the trick of our profession, I think, is to find what is that thing, what is that driver that really everything.
And it's like a snowball, isn't it? It's like a snowball. And it just,
Exactly. And if you find that thing, whatever it is, whether it's weight issues, skin issues, the voice, you know, somebody telling them they weren't good enough, whatever that initial thing is, and you start fixing it, you know, kind of.
I call it finding that switch. The switch either needs to be switched on or switched off, whichever,
exactly,
whatever's going on for the client. And then once that switch has been flicked, everything changes.
So in nutrition, we say, what's the trigger? The trigger that kind of made everything go down. And then what are the drivers, the things that keep it going?
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Really, really good. So, Richard, did you have any other questions?
Well, I mean, for people that are already in relationships, I mean, this year, for example, a lot of people have struggled in their relationships during the lockdown, being in pandemic. There's been a lot of mental health problems. Have you got any advice or any tips for people for this?
Well, first tip is make sure you're in the right relationship. So the thing about lockdown is I actually I was on a radio show recently and they asked me, has lockdown been really bad for relationships? And I was like, actually, for new relationships. And I said, lockdown is like a litmus test. It's like either it shows you very quickly how your relationship is, how your relationship really is. Is it a strong relationship? Is it a good relationship? Or are you guys having loads of cracks that are actually going to break you apart? And one of the things my partner always says is he's like, the divorce rates are going to go sky high during lockdown. And I'm just like, yes, because a lot of people stay in the wrong relationships. But at the same time, the couples who are very strong, I'll just say hail to my sister and my parents who are like, my sister has a really strong partner. And my parents are a very strong couple, and they thrived in lockdown, and the people that I know who have very good, strong relationships, they will thrive in lockdown. The people who have weak relationships where things are not working properly, they will, it will not work. It will fall apart.
And yeah, so the next question then, following on from that, is how do you know if you're in the right relationship?
So I think, well, lockdown is gonna show you that no matter what, because you see how do you guys do together. Like, do you find that you run out of things to talk about when you're always together, or do you find that you don't want to see them because you're
rather be doing something else?
Yeah, exactly. You're like, you get tired of them. So that's one thing. But then also, like, it's really, you have to trust your gut instinct. That's actually something I teach couples to do, teach people to do, because I work more with individuals, is to kind of look inside and say, what is your gut actually telling you? And there's a couple of exercises I do, which are NLP exercises, that help you to decide whether you feel like this is right or not right. The thing about lockdown is it almost made things unnecessary, because you'll see very quickly whether you think it's the right relationship or not. But let's say in real life, when we don't have to deal with all this, constant stress, and we're sitting on the fence, because the hardest place to be is to be sitting on the fence, I think, when you're not sure if it's the right relationship, but you're also not sure it isn't the right relationship. That's almost harder than being sure, because if you're sitting on the fence, you're actually possibly wasting time with the wrong relationship. And the issue is that we don't get younger, and time is not your friend. I hate time. I mean, like, I do, a lot of anti-aging work as well, from the nutrition point of view, and because I hate the fact time runs away much faster than we ever think it will. So there, if you're in doubt, call me, do a 30-minute free call, juliakeller.co.uk. I'm just going to throw that in there, in order so I can explain to you how what kind of work I do with people who are struggling. But I've had quite a few clients where we would do, session after session after session to help them decide what the deal was. One woman actually hired me for a full day, for 8 hours, literally sitting with her to help her make a decision. She's like, I need to just make a decision at the end of this time. So can I have you for the whole day? We literally took a break for lunch, and at the end of that day, she made a decision. Not surprisingly, that the relationship was not the right relationship, and they broke up shortly after. But she was kind of like, I've already wasted 5 years with this person. I don't want to waste anymore. I need to know.
If you're having to deliberate that hard of whether something's right or not, chances are they're not right.
Probably not.
And also, go on.
What I try to help people save is time. Because to be fair, money, you can always make more money. If you know how, if you believe in it, you can never get more time. Time is like something that doesn't matter how rich, how poor, we're equally poor in time.
And just to say as well, like what I've found as well is that people they learn about relationships from their primary caregivers. So depending on what your parents' relationship was like, if you come from a household where there was lots of violence, for example, you may find that, do you find that with clients that, be attracted to somebody who's a bit edgy or a bit violent, or, because that's what they're used to, like you were saying earlier, that's their normal. So
absolutely.
How do they get out of that cycle? Maybe there's somebody out there who's listening, who's in a violent relationship. They really don't know how to get out of it. You know, they're experiencing domestic violence. You
Oh,
know, what's
absolutely.
the first step? Because I know we talk about this journey to self-love, but it is a journey, and it's not easy,
Oh,
and it takes time. So
oh,
what's the first thing somebody can do
you know
if they're
what?
in
It
a
is
relationship that
so
they really need to get out of? And you know, I think that would be really useful for
that is it's you know what the whole allowing people to the violence, and if that's your kind of go-to because that's what you saw in your family, it is so difficult. That is, I have so much compassion for these people, because it is so difficult to get out of, which is where we need to rewire what your normal looks like. I mean, what I've seen, and I had one woman who came to me who had basically violent father who she, you know, would hit her mother, but her mother stayed, still is with the guy, by the way, you know, years and years and years and years and years. And so that was her normal. So then every guy who's like, and she was with the nicest guy. Finally, she got out of a violent relationship, was with the nicest guy. And then that nice guy, she came to me for, funny enough, because she was on the fence with the nice guy, because she was like, he's boring. He's not exciting. You know, the violent guy who was beating me was exciting. It was dangerous. It was scary, but it was exciting. And so, you know, what you have to do is you have to rewire what your normal is.
Yeah.
Because if you're excited by the fact, I mean, people skydive, you know, obviously you can die. You know, people find danger exciting. And if your excitement is being beat up, that's something that needs to be rewired, and that's not something that can be done on a low level of, you know, just coaching. It's just not enough. You know, you need to completely rewire, and that's where things like hypnotherapy, things like tapping, things like NLP, you know, all of the stuff, you need to go deeper, because that's a rewire issue.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Thank you for that. And I'm sure there's people listening to this that might take comfort from that, that
Yeah.
actually it's not their fault, but it's just a faulty wiring,
Oh
and
yeah.
you know, and that can be fixed, and there is help out there. So
And you have to want to. That's the
yes, you have
first step. If you ask what the first step is, you have to want to
yeah.
have something different.
And talk to
Yeah.
someone,
Oh,
get help,
absolutely.
you know, talk to somebody,
Yeah.
anyone, but just there's lots of helplines out there, and you know, it really is. People can get out. It can happen.
And
You
just to
have,
say that Corona time,
mm,
actually, the domestic violence went up
mm,
dramatically,
mm,
because, you know, couples are together, and that man who would beat his wife would sometimes, you know, go to the pub first, get
yeah,
drunk, and pass out before he can beat her up. But
yeah,
now he's with her, so she's
mm,
there all the time. They couldn't go to the pub. I mean, now obviously you can, but you know, during the time, like, they
mm,
couldn't leave, and so they're always together. So he's, you know, always going to be snapping.
yeah,
Um, and like the first step is like you have to value yourself to know that this is not right. You
mm,
don't want to live this life of danger. You don't want it for yourself, and if
mm.
you have kids, you definitely
You
don't
don't
want it
want
for your
it for your
kids.
children. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. So we're nearly coming to the end of our interview. I'm just going to see if yes. So we're going to be doing another show after this one, and that's going to be around soulmates and
Ooh.
finding your soulmate. And one of the things that that lady talks about is before you can find your soulmate is doing a lot of the inner work, what she calls inner work, which is really around the stuff that you've been talking around.
Yeah.
So things like journey to self-love
In
and
here, actually,
self-worth.
there is a whole soulmate thing in here.
And did you have another book as well?
I do. I have another book. So this is actually, this is a book, not just me, but other women coaches as well. And it's about, I think there's 50 of us in here, or 25, 20 of us in here. And it's our stories of how we started out and how we finished up. So basically what we learned through our love journey. And they're very different journeys of growth, of development. This one I always say is a great gift for somebody, because it's beautiful, inspirational stories of basically everyone can get better. So it's inspiring. And sometimes the thing that really helps, I mean, I use it in NLP very often. It's a thing you actually learn in NLP from when you go and learn.
Yeah.
We use stories a lot, so
Use
it
what?
helps people
Stories.
know that other people have
Yes.
succeeded. So
Mm.
that's why inspirational stories are very helpful to help somebody
Awesome.
sometimes to break out of something and to say,
Mm.
okay, I can do this too. Somebody else has done this, so
Mm.
I can do this too. So that's the beautiful thing.
So maybe if somebody has a friend who they think or suspect is being ill-treated, they could buy something like that book for you
Absolutely.
as a gift. You know?
Absolutely. I go into the whole, I mean, I go into a little bit of a letting somebody abuse you in here as well,
Mm.
to be fair.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
That's interesting, isn't it? So, I mean,
Fantastic.
it does a lot of it does start with them, like you say, making a decision that they want things to change.
Yeah.
And then maybe talking to somebody, looking at, there's lots and lots of self-help books out there as well as your books, and really just making that decision that they want things to change. And then they start the
Yeah.
process of doing what we call the inner work
Yes.
and the journey to self-love. And then once they've done that, they can work out whether or not they are in the right relationship. And the chances are, well, if they're getting beaten up, the chances are
No, that's definitely not the right relationship. Yeah.
Yeah.
What I like to tell people is, first you have to say that you want to change,
yeah,
and two, you have to believe that you deserve something better.
yeah.
So it's that kind of second,
Mm,
step of the process. And
excellent.
three, you figure out how to go out and get it. And somewhere in between two and three, there's a lot of work that needs to be
Yeah.
done. So, I mean, a lot of my Attract Authentic Love here, it's in three sections, and
Mm,
also the online one as well,
mm,
and also the work I do face to face. There are three
mm.
sections
Yeah,
that we kind of go through. It's part one, part two, part three. We take 3 steps to getting the love that you want.
yeah. Excellent, excellent.
Fantastic.
Have
Yeah.
you got any final questions, Richard, before we wrap up?
No, I think I would just like to say I think it's great that you've given people so many different ways to start the process, to start the changes, to get into great relationships, or even if you're in relationship, NLP, tapping, all of the things that you've mentioned can help you, I guess, whether you're starting a relationship or you're in the middle of one or you're at the end of one,
Mm,
and I mean, Julia, she does so many things. You do so many things, Julia. But
Mm,
all of those things really are great to help people in any part of their relationship.
mm,
absolutely.
yeah.
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 So, Julia, if you want to just say where people can find you again, and
Yes.
at the end of this call, what we'll do is we'll get all your links, and then when we post the recording of this, we'll post up all your links as well. So, do you want to say where
Amazing.
people can get hold of you before we leave?
Amazing. So it's juliakeller.co.uk. And I've already mentioned the Attract Authentic Love kind of online course and in person and the book. But can I just mention 2 other courses that I do? So one of them, like I mentioned, is about attracting love, attracting friendship, kind of like dealing with loneliness and, self-love, self-worth. So that's one. I have another 2, which are more, let's say, about the way we look or about the way we feel, about being healthy. So one is specifically helping you to get the body that you want. So it's working a lot on the way you see yourself and the way you think about how, what you are. And that's one-on-one. It's either face-to-face in person or over Zoom. You can find out more about that by booking, if you go to juliakeller.co.uk, there's a place where you can book a free 30-minute call with me. And another one is about skin. So that skin one is specifically oriented to people who have skin issues like eczema, psoriasis, acne, or who just want to kind of maintain younger looking skin for longer. So it's basically that same kind of thing. We think of how we think, how we eat, how we live. Everything, falls into those 3 categories. So that's another course. And again, that's one-on-one with me. We will have online courses for those 2 as well, but those are new. So those are one-on-one for now. And just so you know, if you're tuning in here, I have a special offer just for people who are tuning into your show right now, where they get a 25% off discount, but only the first 10, because I cannot give it to more than that. Otherwise, it will just cost me too much money. You get 25% off my usual price if you're in the first 10 that sign up from watching this. And to find out more and to sign up, you book a free 30-minute call with me on www.juliakeller.co.uk.
Excellent, Julia. That was very comprehensive. I'm sure everyone's got all your details now, but just to be sure, do send us your links, and we'll drop them when we post this online. So I'm just going to stop the recording.